Hello, and thank you for joining the Club President's Orientation. Once again, please feel free to use the Whova chat to converse with other attendees. If you have questions for the presenters, please put them in the Zoom chat. I am pleased to now introduce Kathleen Douglas from the Leadership Development Committee. Kathleen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gina, and welcome to everybody who's taking time out of your busy day to be here today. I'm very pleased to be able to offer you this session, which is for you. So as we go through the next 45 minutes or so, feel free to use the chat to share ideas, your thoughts, your contributions, because this is really about you. So we're going to move on to the next slide. I've been working with Catherine and the other members of the Leadership Development Committee to develop this session for you. And Catherine delivered the session this morning at a very early hour. And I decided to do the late afternoon one because here in Ontario, Canada, it's about 4 o'clock on a sunny afternoon, and I was able to relax and enjoy a sunshine in the backyard. Absolutely. So could we have the next slide, please? So what we're looking at today is really talking about some ideas, some tips and tricks, and some thoughts to help you be the best leader that you can be, to help you experience Zonta in a leadership role, and most of all, to really be able to better understand a little bit more about the organization and your role as the president. It's a really exciting and wonderful position to be in. I have been president of our club twice, so I could tell you from experience, I was a much better president the second time around, just through experience, through learning, through challenges, and a lot of encouragement and support. Next slide, please. So as club president, you are a leader in your club. You're not the boss, you're not the manager. So this is different than being in the workplace. So your role as president is really to engage and motivate the members to participate and to enjoy their relationship with Zonta, because that's what it is. It's a relationship built strongly with other members of the club, but also with members of your area and your district and throughout the international organization. As a leader, you want to listen very much. You want to share. You want to pay attention to what's being offered to you. You want to acknowledge and recognize your members' contributions for their engaging of time and sometimes money. You want to be able to share leadership to lead the club and create a really good environment to meet the club's goals, as well as Zonta International's biennial goals. Working with your board, who are elected to support and be with you as shared leadership, you want to ensure that your board is a team, that you're feeling as if they are really involved, that it's not so much you as the cheerleader as the only person, but working with a team of cheerleaders for the club. You want to maybe consider thinking about working together to bring new ideas and try new things, and perhaps offer the opportunities to think a little bit differently. Just because you've always done this way doesn't mean that's the way it has to be. So you want to be open to new ideas and be creative and think about how our world has changed in the last couple of years and what we can do to leverage it and to take advantage of some of those wonderful changes that have happened, because there have been some wonderful changes. Next slide, please. So when we think about effective leaders, when I think about effective leaders, I may have a certain perception of what they should be. What do you think that they should be? Maybe you could enter that in the chat box while Gina goes through a few more of the ideas on this slide. And Catherine, you can let me know what some of our members think about leadership qualities.
Yes, I will. Nothing comes in so far.
Oh.
Ignite the spark, involve, create a network.
Yes, absolutely. And I really like that word network, not only within the club, but within your community and other organizations. Absolutely.
From Hua, being a good listener.
Very important. And sometimes that requires modesty. because your ideas are not always the best. It's good to get input. Please continue to put them in the chat. We'll move on to the next slide though.
Encourage other members to participate was the last one.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely critical to success of your club. And Zonta International has created many tools for new presidents and maybe recycled presidents or experienced presidents to be successful. Have you read the most recent club manual? Some districts actually have a president's manual as well, and all clubs should at least have bylaws and hopefully some strategic plans and some policies and bylaws that align with Zonta International's. All of these tools are created to help you be successful, so you want to use them. We at the Leadership Development Committee have worked very hard to create some tools for you to ensure they're updated. We've even added some of these tools in other languages. So if you are fluent in German or Spanish or French, these tools are available for you at your local, on your website. So you can just sort of tap into them. Hopefully you are all using MyZonta. Your governor may also have created some district goals, and you want to incorporate those goals as well. As we go into the next biennium, your governor may want to, along with your district board, pursue a certain project or have some priorities. And you want to ensure that your club is consistent with your district and your Zonta International goals. And if you've been a member for a long time, you might think, oh, I know all this stuff. It's the same thing as it was 10 years ago. It's not. Many of the tools have been updated. Some of them have been changed. There's a lot of stuff happening on the Zonta International website. And I would really encourage you to use that frequently, to visit it on a regular basis. It's very helpful for you, because all of your access to leadership development are in the MyZonta area of the website. And so, of course, you're using your name and your password, and you are encouraging your club members to also visit the website. If you have still got connected with the old website, you may want to visit the new one. It's been a while, and it's been remarkable changes on that, just tremendous. So please feel free to bookmark Zonta International, MyZonta, on your browser, so that it's there, just right there at your fingertips. There's a lot of really good information there, but there's also good tips from other leaders within the organizations. So you don't have to really create anything new. You have to perhaps tap into what's been done. You can reinvent the wheel, but don't be afraid to ask and use what's there for you to use. We built this information for you. Next slide, please, Gina. So as you know, I wanted to ensure that you understand the president's responsibility, and I would actually like to read this to you so that you have a true understanding of what the president is, because unlike other organizations, Zonta's presidency role is a little bit unique. The president shall preside at all meetings of the club and of the board, and should be the chief executive officer of the club. Subject to approval by the board, the president shall appoint chairman of standing committees and all other committees except the nominating committee, which has to be done by the club. The president shall be ex officio member of all committees except the nominating committee. And that simply means that you are an unofficial member of all the committees, so that all communication should flow through you. Next one, please. And here is something that might be, again, a little bit different and unique for Zonta. Our club boards will have general supervision of the affairs of the club between meetings of the club, provided that none of its acts shall conflict with action taken by the club. It may act upon routine questions and carrying out established policies, but shall not determine policies, authorize projects and donations, or adopt the budget. It shall perform such duties as are required by the bylaws and rules of the procedures of Zonta International. The Zonta Club Manual shall serve as a guideline for club operation. So succinctly, I just want to advise you that the board is an advisory board. The board cannot make decisions on behalf of the club. The board can make recommendations and suggestions and shall offer their leadership on the activities of the club, but the board doesn't make the decisions, because the club is the ownership. They are the membership of the club, and they really are the ones who have to take the responsibilities for making decisions And it's important that we understand that we don't try to manage the club through the board, because really we are servant leaders of our club. Next slide, please. So we want to have the best quality of meetings that we can. And we spend a lot of time in meetings, whether it's in Zonta or in other venues, whether it's through your workplace or other organizations to which you belong. And as president, you will set the agenda in conjunction with the members of your board. So you sort of in some ways control the agenda, and you have the capability to make a very rich meeting, or you could have a meeting that people will look back on and think, well, there's 3 hours, I'll never get out of my life again. So we really want to focus on time management and using the face-to-face time now that we're starting to get back together face-to-face. You want to ensure that we use that time for discussions, for making decisions, and not necessarily wrap it up in sharing information. One of the things I would suggest to you that I tell all of any board with whom I'm working is that we want to use our meetings to maximize our face-to-face time. So at the beginning of your meeting, after you sort of do the niceties and you have the introductions and maybe a social time and perhaps even a meal, get into the discussion and the decision-making, because information can be shared in different ways. It can be given out through emails or conversations afterwards. And if people have to leave the meeting, or if it gets late in the evening, they start to lose energy and momentum. And sometimes if we leave the big conversations to the end, we don't do a very good job because we just want to go home. So think about managing your time and focusing on your agenda, what's really important, what's going to benefit the members and the projects that you have and the people in your community whom you serve. So really think about making your meetings as efficient and effective as possible and focus on important issues. So one of the poll questions I think we've got that one up next, is how many of you through the last couple of years, or maybe even beforehand, if you were forward thinking, have found Zoom or GoToMeetings or any of your other platforms effective for meetings? So I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on this poll. So please use this poll. You can make one choice and one choice only. And Gina will give it another 4, 3, 2, 1. You can close the poll now. How did we do? Yes, they have found it effective. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Certainly within our club, I don't know that we'll ever go back to face-to-face board meetings. We're looking forward to face-to-face club meetings, but the board meetings are very effective. We find that we get a lot done through our Zooms. And since you have a Zoom account, why not use it? So that's an interesting comment. I think from what we heard from other presentations is that many of the clubs now are actually looking at hybrid models, because when you have capacity of Zoom or GoToMeetings or one of the other virtual opportunities, you can not only get a very good effective use of time, but you can also include speakers from around the world within your district or Zonta International, or guests that can come from any part in the world. In fact, one of our meetings in, I think it was March, we actually had a speaker from California who just Zoomed in with us. And it was a great opportunity to hear somebody we would never have been able to hear from before, because we were able to Zoom her in. So think about that. Next slide, please. So one of the ideas around an effective meeting is using a consent agenda. And just in the chat box, if you can just make a note of those of you who do use a consent agenda. I'm curious as this, it's a poll. A consent agenda, does your club use a consent agenda? 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll close that. Yes, many of you have used it. So that's interesting. 76% of you have used a consent agenda. So let's close that particular poll, and we'll just talk about what a consent agenda is. So there's a great bit of information about how consent agendas really help streamline meetings. So a consent agenda really is that part of your meeting that doesn't really need much discussion. So it could include things like previous minutes. It could include committee reports where there's no discussion or decisions to be made. It's just information. It could be financial statements, if there's no big changes to your financial statements, or correspondence, things that are really not critical to the discussion or the focus of your meeting. And you put those together in a consent agenda. So on your agenda, you would have items like consent agenda, which would include previous minutes, correspondence, things like that. And you would vote on that particular consent agenda as one item. And once that's agreed upon, then it's gone. You then now can move on to things that require discussion and conversations. And it's really helpful because I don't know about you, but I've sat in meetings where people are reading their reports that have been submitted in writing, and you sit there and you think, okay, let's go on and on and on. And basically, I don't want to be disrespectful, but you're wasting time, because as adults, most of us can read. And so we are reading those reports. Why go over them again? Because it's just information. Now, if you have committee reports or other items that need to be discussed, or there's some things that have to be decided upon, that's of course what you want to have in the focus of your meeting. So one of the things that you want to do if you're considering using consent agenda, and on the leadership development page, there's information about consent agendas. And there's lots of information on the internet, is actually ask the board if the board would like to try using the consent agenda. If the board says, yeah, we think this is a pretty good try, you might want to try it out with your board as an example. And then if that seems to be working and you worked out sort of the kinks and that, then you can ask the club, which we like to maybe try the consent agenda for our upcoming meetings. And these are the reasons why. So the challenge is for us that in order for a consent agenda to work, information has to be sent out well enough ahead of time, at least 3 or 4 days, maybe even a week, so people can actually read it. And the expectation is that if you are a committee chair or someone who has something to report, that you do send it in to who's ever doing the agenda, whether it's the club secretary or whether it's you as president, however it's working in your club. So you really just want to think about, with a consent agenda, adding that to something that you might want to give it a try for the upcoming biennium or your time as president. The worst that can happen is it doesn't work very successfully. The most successful thing is that it's great and it's saving you time, and the club gets to be experienced with using a consent agenda. It's a very common practice, and I know that when I was on the board at Zonda International, we use this consent agenda, and I'll tell you, when you have 4-day meetings, it saved quite a bit of time. So just something for you to think about. It's just a tool for you to use. Next slide, please. So one of the things I did mention before about relationships, and in my 42 years as a Zonta member, I've had a relationship with Zonta. And a relationship that lasts that long, whether it's a marriage or with a service organization, it has its times when, you know, if it ebbs and it flows, and sometimes you're right in there and other times you're just barely hanging on, getting to the meetings. And the relationships with Zonta are built on relationships with other people. Zonta doesn't have a product. We are not manufacturing anything. Zonta is made up of people. And our relationship with Zonta is our relationship with other people, the members of our club, the members of our area and district, and Zonta International, members around the world. So when you think about relationships, you want to ensure that you encourage a relationship with your area director. Invite them to a meeting. If you've got an induction or an installation ceremony, ask your area director and or your governor, lieutenant governor, whoever, to participate in that, so they get to know a little bit about your club, but also for your members to get to know who your area director is, what their role is, what's outside of your particular club, what's happening within your area. Inviting your governor so that she or he can talk about what's happening within the district, because your club is the essence of the relationship with Zonta for your members, but it's not the only relationship. If I could compare it to a marriage, it's like having the family that you marry into. It's got in-laws and it's got stepbrothers and half-sisters and things like that. And you want to make sure that everybody's working well together. So encourage your club members to participate in things that happen outside of your club, whether it's information about other clubs who are having events that you want to encourage. You might say, hey, we've got another club that's having a film festival. Who would like to go? I'll drive, or we could sort of put carpool together, or whatever that looks like. Encourage people to participate outside of your club, and also develop those relationships with other organizations within your community, whether they're like-minded women's groups or other groups that provide service or whoever that is. Within our community, we have a very powerful business and professional women's organization, and we have worked very closely with them on our advocacy projects. And the other thing is that when you think about what they can bring to you, your club, what can you take to their club? How can you share things? Maybe it's shared event. Maybe it's shared information. Maybe it's just getting to know a little bit about them. We actually had a member of who's the new international president for Rotary as a woman. We actually had her speak to our club about Rotary and her goals as the international president for Rotary, which was quite fascinating. Likewise, I've gone to speak to Rotary, and we've worked on projects together. So think about developing relationships within Zonta, but also outside of Zonta to enrich your club and offer opportunities for membership to other people. Next slide, please. So some of the little tips for success. And Catherine and I, through our experience, are offering some of these just as our suggestions and our learning. And some of the things we sort of think, well, I would have done that differently. So we want to share that with you, because as a leader, it falls to you to find help for your team, for support, to help get the job done. It's not only you that can do it. I remember when I was doing some advisory work with one of the other districts in North America. And I was asked to attend their board meeting just to observe, because I was doing some training for them. And so the governor had asked me to just observe and get some feedback on the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I said to, when asked my thoughts, and I said, and do you realize that during the course of this meeting, it was about an hour and a half 2-hour meeting, when you ask for people to do something or you ask for some help and there was nothing, you said, well, I can do that. And I said 52 times, I wrote it down 52 times in a couple of hours. You said, oh, that's okay, I'll do it. I'll take care of that. What does that say to the person who's going to be following you if they don't have the time to do those 52 things? Or the fact that your club thinks that you are Zonta, and why should I bother offering anything, because she's just going to do it anyway. So you really want to make sure that you do share and that you get the right person for the right task at the right time. And sometimes when you ask somebody to do something, they may say, oh, really? No, I don't think so. Maybe it's just the timing. Maybe it's the fact that perhaps it's just not working out for them at that moment. It's not a no forever. It's a no right now. And so when you ask someone and they say no, one of the things that you can follow up with is to say, may I ask you for help in the future? And so what you're really doing is you're sort of building that resource for the future, and recognize those people who do something very well. And to use Catherine's example from this morning, if you have somebody who's really keen into advocacy and really doing a good job, maybe consider asking them and say, Catherine, I see you are really, really interested in advocacy, and you are obviously very talented and knowledgeable. Would you consider being the chair of the advocacy committee so you could infuse your enthusiasm with other people? So try to choose the best people for the best job. And don't be disappointed if they say no. You can say, I understand, and I respect that, because you don't want to have someone in a position where they're not going to be successful. So compliment your team members. And I would say that one of the biggest jobs for a president is to constantly recognize the efforts of their members. And we have a current club president, as an example, who was vice president twice and never went on to become leader because she was working on different things for her career. So she said, fine, so now finally she's president. She says, I've been vice president twice. I think it's about time now. I could do this now, because she now has the time. And she's remarkable because she's a great communicator, following up after meetings with action items to make sure that we all know what we're doing. And in almost every piece of email I get from her, she will always close with, thank you for what you do for Zonta. I mean, it's a really honest and sincere way to recognize that people give of their time and their money to an organization. I mean, basically, we are paying to volunteer. So let's recognize those contributions and the effort, because Zonta, in very few cases, is someone's first priority. Usually it's their health and themselves and their family and their job, maybe their cultural backgrounds or their religion. And sometimes Zonta is fourth or fifth priority. And we need to understand that there are those of us who don't live for Zonta. So we have to be appreciative of what they do give when they can give it. Next slide, please. So when you talk about Zonta, you may have certain things though. When I'm president, I'm going to do this. We are going to do it this way. Well, and that's great to have a vision of what you would like to do. May I encourage you to discover that this is a shared mission or shared vision, that you really get support and buy-in or engagement from your club members and your board. So it's not just your own vision, that it becomes the club's vision, that they can get behind it, that they can support it, that you are encouraging committee chairs and committee members and members at large to participate and offer new ideas, because you're not going to say, oh no, we did that 15 years ago and it didn't work then. Or the other thing is, well, I don't know that we don't have enough people to do that. Or you're saying no without saying no. Because once you start shutting down ideas, what happens is that people don't start offering ideas anymore. So, our past does inform our future, but we're not limited by it. And I think one of the things, again, during COVID, one of the great things that has happened, I found, is that people have become very creative in fundraising, in meetings, and how to create social environments. Our club, one of the things that we did last year as a social time was having a wine tasting evening, where a few of us got together. We put together some wine and some snacks and we delivered them. And it was a very social evening on the internet. We had some tips for our wine because we're wine drinkers. And, it was just a lovely evening. It was just minimal cost. We said, well, this was such a good idea. It was so easy to do. Let's try it this year for a fundraiser. So this coming Tuesday night, we have a fundraiser with 40 people. 3/4 of them are not Zonta members. And so we've got people coming here on Monday night. We're putting together the wine packages and the food, distributing them with our little Zonta information. Because at the beginning of the meeting, for example, before we have the wine tasting, we have a rolling slide deck with all about Zonta. So people who are not necessarily knowledgeable about Zonta will be able to sort of learn a little bit more about Zonta. So that's something we would not have done before COVID. So again, let's take what we've learned through these last couple of years and leverage it to maximize what our club can do. Try new things. The worst that can happen is it doesn't work. And you say, well, that was a lesson learned. What can we do next time? So how can we update things and bring energy and positive energy? And just be open to new ideas, even if they're not yours. Because as brilliant as you all are, and as creative as you all are, you don't have all the answers, my friends. And so let's rely on the richness of our members together to have a successful club. Next slide, please. So when you think about some of the things that we do, we have got a lot of technology, and I think this has really been honed very well. Just the fact that we had our last convention, it was all virtual, and this year it's a hybrid. We didn't do that before, and good for us for giving that a try. And look at the apps that we're using. It's remarkable. So think about using some of the platforms for successful meetings, for invitations. And when you're using your email, you might want to consider thinking about what's the best time for your members to get their email. Is it once a week? I think, Catherine, you were mentioning that you're in Switzerland. It's this is how do you say Zunde on Sunday?
Sonntag.
Sonntag. So
Sonntag. Ganz similar to Zonta.
Exactly. And so the club president sends out the information on Sundays. I think that's a fabulous way. I mean, wonderful creative idea and able to link things together. You don't want to overburden your members with daily emails. At the same time, you want to make sure they're connected. Using your website, make sure that's updated, because I can tell you with 100% confidence, if you're looking at new members, one of the first things they're going to do is go to your website. And if you have not updated your website in the last 2 years, they're going to think, who is this club? Like, what are they, a bunch of all 85-year-olds who don't care about the internet? They're not going to have a very good image of that. It's the way to excite interest. When I'm the editor of our club newsletter, and every month in our newsletter, we have a toast for other Zonta clubs. So one of the things I do is I look for Zonta members. For example, it'd be in California, I'd look for President Sharon's club or Catherine's club, or different members around the world are members of our board, and we will have a toast just written down. So I go onto the websites to find out about them. And some of the websites are absolutely amazing. And some of them I think, oh my goodness, I have to do a lot more research, because otherwise I won't be able to find out anything about this club at all. So you might want to think about really maximizing your website, not only for external potential members and the public, but also to use to keep your documents, to store your documents for a members only section, or for your board, using Dropbox or Google Docs and things like that are very powerful. And so really think about who is your audience in today's world. Even those of us who are not necessarily tech oriented have become tech oriented over the last couple of years because we've had to in order to communicate. So let's continue that on. And while we are not necessarily all Sheryl Sandbergs, at the same time, we can still use what we have. And we can have members in our club who are very good at it. Let's tap into those, because when members come into your club, they offer you gifts of time and talent. And if we don't use those gifts, it's kind of an insult to them. When someone says, hey, I can help you with that website, and then you never call upon them, or you say, yeah, we're going to do that. We'll do that later on. What does that say to them? I'm giving you this gift and you don't want it. And that's disrespectful. So think about using the gifts of your members and the talents they have. Next slide, please. So when you think about, again, as a leader, one of the challenges that we heard, especially with the last session, Catherine, is time. People are worried about time commitment. And you have control of your time. We all have the same 24 hours. You use it as you see fit. And so I would suggest you, if you are organized and timely, maybe you have a schedule, whether it's in your mobile or whether you have a big calendar, it doesn't really matter, as long as you are organized and you think about things that you have to have done and then backing that up so that you're not leaving everything to the last minute. Because as some of you know, there's an axiom that says, your lack of planning is not my emergency. So you really want to think about ensuring that as a leader, that you are communicating, that you're communicating effectively. You're not over communicating, but you're also not just sort of saying, well, they should know that. Delegation is not abdication. I like that. So it doesn't mean that you sort of just say, well, I gave it to you, you're on your own. You really want to think about things, keep an eye on things, and make sure that you don't micromanage, because that will make people crazy. But at the same time, you just want to be in touch. How's everything going? How's everything going with the wine tasting? Or this committee's got an event coming up next month. Anything I can do to help? Everything going well? Terrific, wonderful. And so at your board meetings or your club meetings, you want to just make sure those are the kinds of things that people are being kept up to date about. And again, sending out information as the club leader, whether it's through the agenda or whether it's other forms of communication, asking people, did you get your news onto international, the newsletter? Did you get a hard copy of the magazine? Are you getting what you need? Particularly new members, because it might be a little bit of a lag from when they join your club to when they start actually getting information from Zonda International. And just say, let me know when you get your information from Zonda International. How did you like it? What did you think about that? Isn't it great? So you just want to be in touch with them and be as prepared as you can. I attended a Zonta meeting for a club, unnamed club. It was my own. And we at that time had a president. She came to the meeting and didn't have an agenda. She wrote it out on her napkin. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like this does not present a good image. And I was grateful, quite honestly, that I had not brought a guest to that meeting, because I would have been embarrassed. It was not professional at all. So just think about, what is it that you want to, what message is it that you want to send? So next slide, please, Dina. So as president, you do not have to do it alone. Think about starting to work with your board members, and think about those members who are real keeners. I mean, somebody who's just enthusiastic, somebody who's got some skills, they have gifts to give to the club, and start offering them the opportunities. Would you like to do this? Have you thought about going onto this committee? Maybe in the next year, you might consider being a committee chair. You want to start succession planning. And one of the reasons that in our club, we try and have an alternate where we have a relatively inexperienced member training for the leadership for the president's role, followed by somebody who is experienced. So you've got somebody who's experienced, somebody who's learning, somebody who's experienced, somebody who's learning. And what that does really ensures that you've got good information and there's a good understanding of what the responsibilities and the opportunities are. So we all have a voice, because Zonta is a democratic organization. So we want to ensure all members are active in the club, whether it's events or activities or whatever that is. One of the things that the second time I was present, as I say, much better opportunity for our members, is that we actually had a scorecard. At every meeting, we talked about what's the percentage of people coming out to our meetings. No names were mentioned. How many participated in our fundraising events? How many people participated in this? And we would just let the club know, hey, this was an 85% participation. Isn't that great? That's really wonderful. And over the last couple of years, clubs have found that sometimes there's an apathy or a lack of energy, because when you're having virtual meetings, it's not the same energy as there is when you're meeting face to face. So you really want to start thinking about, how do we get those members involved? How do we get them back? How do we get that enthusiasm back? Well, one of the things is by encouraging people, asking somebody who's maybe a little bit quiet or doesn't participate a lot, give them a specific task for your meeting. For example, it could be, I might say, Gina, could you please go into the Zonta website and for 2 minutes share something about Zonta that you think we might like to know? Because one of the things as the club president, because you build the agenda, may I suggest to you, you always build in a Zonta International moment, whether that's a couple of minutes, whether that's showing up one of the little videos, whether you're sharing some information, always relating it back to Zonta International so that we don't forget that we are part of something large and something magnificent. Because sometimes it's easy to forget that we're not just this little club in our own small community, that we are part of a great organization, an international organization. So consider that. I mean, again, as I say, you want to have guilt-free membership, so you want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in what they're doing. And if someone says, Kathleen, I don't feel comfortable in presenting yet, that's perfectly fine. How about writing something for the newsletter? Does that work for you? Encourage as many people as you can to participate. This could be one of your own goals that you have, is to have all of your members participate in some way, some manner, that they can feel that they're involved and appreciated and recognized. Next slide, please. So when you use things like a general, a consent agenda, and you are timely in your communications and you're getting routine things done, you start to build your own little pattern for your timing. And you can give it as much time as it needs to have. You can plan that time. And if you are someone that says, I'm doing my Zonta business on Sunday night or on Friday morning or whatever that works, you just let people know, this is what I'm going to be very honest with them. So this is my time for Zonta, and you can actually set aside, if you want to, in your agenda, your daily schedule, to actually make your Zonta time. It's up to you. Just communicate that so people don't expect things that you're not going to be able to respond to them right away. And if people do send you emails and you don't necessarily know the answer, just let them know and say, I'm sorry, I don't have the answer right now. Let me get back to you. At least they know you've heard them, that you've read the email, that you are that they are communicating with you, that you got their message. Because sometimes people think, I sent her a message a week ago and I haven't heard anything. Did she even get it? I mean, I don't know. So you want to have educational topics when you can, informational topics on your agendas, but also spend some time talking about your club, talking about what leadership looks like in your club, talking about Zonta International within your club. There's lots of time in your agenda if you build it in. And you might alternate your meetings to have very much program meetings that have speakers or sessions that you have, or whether it's social events or just business meetings. And you can have a combination, whatever works for your club. We tend to alternate between sort of business meetings and then having program meetings where we can invite other people to attend, because we've got really good speakers and we've got some good programs. It's up to you to figure that out, but talk to your club and say, well, what can we do to make our meetings really interesting for us as members? Because we don't want that, oh, I've just spent 2 hours of my life. That was just awful. I mean, I just so glad to get out of there. Or that was a fabulous meeting. I learned so much. Because, my friends, there's no more precious gift than time. So let's use that time well. Next slide, please. So when you can have a moment, go into the chat box, because we would like to see what one tip you would have to offer in your experience as a Zonta leader or a leader in your another organization or in your workplace. What are some of the tips on leadership for success you would like to share with the other members of this call? So just enter the chat line and Catherine's going to give us some feedback. And as you're doing that, just let me say to you that you are really modeling the leadership role. You're also happy to set the culture of your club. You want feedback from your members. You really want to sort of talk about what's important to you, to do a survey or just imitate what you think are really good leadership behaviors and practice that. Sometimes it's really just practicing the leadership roles. And although I've been talking a lot for 45 minutes, you really want to listen more than you talk. You want to be as positive as you can. Catherine, are we seeing any ideas in the chat box?
Unfortunately, not, no.
No, not so far. Oh,
Now the
recognize-
first one comes in, recognizing others' efforts.
Yes, absolutely. And saying thank you. Saying thank you to that member who did whatever they did and being honest about that. On that idea of recognition, one of the things that our club does is we have what we call a spirit award. And this goes from one member, they have it for one month, and they give it to somebody else who they think really exemplifies the spirit of Zonta. So it could be, you know, for example, it might be because someone's been really active on a committee for a long time, or they've done a remarkable job, but it's nothing coming from Zonta International or the board, it's member to member, recognizing that leadership. And it was just a little trophy that we got, which was amazing. So recognition is very, very important. Catherine, anything else?
A new one came in, encourage learning and personal development of our members.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kathleen, you have presented the terrific seminar. Many thanks. I send you an email for more info on the wine tasting and fundraiser.
Ah, yes, I'm glad to talk with you about that.
Great. Make time for socializing is another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we are social creatures. And if our meetings are all business, it becomes work.
Yeah.
So you really want to sort of balance that social and the tasks very well. Any last
Another one is try to understand what motivates each member, as no one style suits all.
Absolutely.
And then another one, this is my second time around as president, and I know now that one of the things I struggle with is delegating. I know it's important to work to bring members to work together, and that we will be stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you think about, you know, there's that little example, if you have like a, you know, a little stick, like a popsicle or a lollipop stick, you know, it's easy to break that. If you get a group together, you can't break that. It's like your team. Together, you're far much more successful together. Thank you for that. We actually have a traps to avoid for our next slide. So these are some of the things that we've learned, you know, again, to avoid. Absolutely. You do not have to do everything. Delegation is sometimes hard to let go. And you might think, but I want everything perfect. You know what? We are not perfect people. We are not going to have perfect relationships. Everything we do is not going to be perfect. And because somebody does something differently than you, it doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different. And you know what? And part of maturity is realizing it's okay. I had a former CEO say to me one time, Geppo, good enough, push on, which I really like. Sometimes that's all you can do. It's not going to be perfect, and it's okay. Zonta is not going to fire you. You are not going to be, it's not a life support system. Zonta is a service organization where we build a magnificent world together with other people. And that's all that we can do. And don't lose sight of Zonta International in the big picture. May I suggest to you that, again, just letting go is okay. Not abdication, delegation. So we've got a poll question coming up for you.
I still have one more comment.
Oh,
You have to delegate and follow up, so you have more time for relationship building, which is nice as well. Yeah.
I think that's very well said. Thank you for that, whoever shared that. So this is our third poll. What concerns do you have as incoming presidents? It's a little bit of multiple choice here. Or is it really, I mean, it could be all of them. I hope it's not all of them, but do you think you're going to be fine? You're not worried about that? Or I'm really worried about the time commitment, or I'm really not sure I can do this job. I sort of got snaggled into it, or it seems like such a big job. So we're going to choose one of these, or if you feel like if more than one applies to you, that's okay. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, One. I'll be fine. I'm worried about time commitment. Yes. It seems like such a big gap. Well, you know what? This is fairly evenly spaced out here. It's surprising. I'm glad to see not too many of you thought that you can't do the job. Obviously, the members of your club did think you could do it, or you wouldn't have been elected as president. Or perhaps you were a president who says, well, nobody else will do it, I'll do it. You know what? And you can do it. You can, because there's lots of people who will help you and support you and halo you with support. Time commitment, there's lots of tools out there to manage your time. And I think it was, again, as we talked a little bit earlier, you have to sort of think about yourself, how you're going to manage your time, and be honest and be very clear about the expectation, because I've always found that in conflict, very often conflict comes from a lack of clarity of expectations. So if your club members are expecting you to respond to their emails within 5 minutes, and that's just not simply your style or the time you have available, then be very honest with them about that. And maybe when you have your first meeting, you can just say, I just want to let you know I'm going to be focusing my Zonta time on this particular efforts, or I'll do that when I can. I have a full-time job. I'm doing the best I can. I really appreciate your patience. That's being honest with them. Clarity of expectations for you and for your members. Thank you for that. So I think we're going to look at the next slide now, which is really sort of wrapping it up here. We've got some tools that are available to you. The President's Companion, which former President, Zonta International President Suzanne and I worked on. It was sent to all the area directors in the past. It's available on the Zonta International website. There is a club manual that was updated in the last year or so. The terrific e-learning sessions in the Leadership Development Committee page. And if you are still relatively new to Zonta or new to leadership, different kinds of resources there for you. You don't have to go through the whole thing at a time. You're not being tested on the results or what you know about Zonta. It's for you when you have a few minutes. Maybe rather than watching TikTok for 10 minutes, you could look at a Zonta video for 10 minutes. Perhaps you could do that. Or encourage, I always encourage my my boards to actually take just a few minutes at each board meeting, just to look at one small of the learning sessions and then have a conversation about it. Are we applying some of these principles to it? How are we doing with this? Oh my gosh, we're doing so great. Yes, our members really know about Zonta International. Or you know what, we don't do that very well. Maybe there's something we can learn. And many of you as members have contributed to the member resources. The resources are there, my friends. We created them for you to help you because we understand what it's like. When we first became presidents or when we had leadership roles, there wasn't a whole lot that we had other than just manuals. So now it's a very interactive location on the website. There's really good stuff there. And read and learn, and you watch videos or listen to TED Talks on leadership if that's important to you. But there are resources that can help you. There are people who can help you. Your area directors and your governors, your board members, other members of your community, your family members maybe, former club presidents. People will help if you ask them. And people like to be asked for help. So on that note, I'm just going to give you the last slide there, which is for more information. If you've got our information here. Those of you who do want some information about the wine tasting, I'm glad to send it out to you. Just pop me an email. And within the next day or so, I'm glad to send that out to you. It may not be the end of today, but I'm certainly glad to share with you what we have. So Catherine, is there anything that you'd like to add as we conclude this session as a newly elected Lieutenant Governor?
Enjoy your presidency. It's the first step to move up later on.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Yes.
Really wonderful. And I think, you know, Catherine, you and I have certainly learned a lot in Zonta about leadership.
Yes. Yes.
As I'm sure any of you who have had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Gina, is there anything you would like as a wrap up? Anything from Zonta International?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining the Club President's Orientation. A reminder that the recording will be posted in Whova. So you'll check back later. You'll go to the exact same place that you went to access the video today to watch the recording. And please join us next week for our virtual keynote speaker, Carmen Ortiz-McGee. She will speak on Monday, 6 June at 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time about empowering women and the importance of self-love and uplifting others. We also have a couple of speed networking sessions and district meetings beginning next week. And on Monday, 13 June, we will host 2 delegates orientations. Please check our website or the HUVA agenda for more details on all of that. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you again to you, Kathleen and Catherine, for sharing this wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you to all the members who took time to be here today. Congratulations for stepping up to leadership.
Thank you all, and some of you hopefully see you in Hamburg.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Take